This video is all about answering one of life's biggest questions. Is there a God? Is God real? And if so, what is the nature of this God? Is he an angry old man with a beard on a cloud throwing lightning bolts at people he doesn't like? Or is God more like a field effect like gravity? We'll get into that, and I'm going to try to answer this decisively for you in the next 10 minutes or so. So buckle your seatbelt, it's going to be quite a ride. I am Brent Michael Phillips. I am the founder and creator of the Awakening Dynamic System of energy healing and higher consciousness. And I have devoted my adult life to answering life's biggest questions. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for you in this series. This video, number 2 in this series, is all about, is there a God? Is God real? If you have not done so yet, you might want to check out video 1 in the series. It's kind of an introduction and overview. It talks about why I think I found these answers. What's my methodology? How do we verify them? Should you believe me? So if you have any questions like that, maybe you pause this, check out video number 1 and come back to it. Awesome, so let's get into it. Let's see if we can answer this for you directly. Is there a God? Is God real? So I'm going to answer that for you right now. The answer, unfortunately, is a bit evasive, but the only real answer is it depends on how you define God. And so we're going to talk a lot in this video about different ways that different people and cultures have defined God. And so we're going to ask, is the divine really like that? We'll look at the major faiths. We'll look at the Western philosophies and perspectives. We'll also look at the Eastern philosophies and perspectives. So to understand why defining God is so critical, it's a foundational step. You can't move forward without that. To give you an example, if you were to ask me, Brent, hey Brent, are you a Christian? I could not answer that without more information. Why? Whether or not I would identify as a Christian depends on how one defines that. So as an example, if you said, hey Brent, I define Christian as meaning one who studies and tries to draw insight and guidance from the teachings of Jesus Christ, then I would say, yes, I'm absolutely a Christian. I think Jesus was one of our greatest spiritual teachers. He had a lot of amazing stuff to say. I really do. So by that definition, yes, Brent is a Christian. But by a different definition, do you subscribe to a formal orthodoxy? Are you a member of a particular religious group that is Christian? I would say no. Why? I'm not going to be boxed in by anybody else's philosophy. I want to be a spiritual person with a direct relationship with God, rather than needing an intermediary through the priest and the church. Why? It's nothing special about me. It's just we're at the point in our human evolution where we're ready for that. Just like when I was 3 years old, I had pretty much the same body and brain and genetics and all that I did when I was 19. But had you tossed me into an upper division engineering class at 3, I would have failed. In fact, I probably would have sat in the class for a while, gotten bored, and started crying. So it's not that there was anything wrong with me, I just wasn't ready. 16 years later, I was ready. It was hard, but I could do it. So it's the same thing. It all depends on how you define it. And some of us aren't ready to have a direct relationship with God. That's okay. You're not one of them because you're here, right? You're ready for a direct relationship with God. So how do we define God? I'm going to first look at the Western viewpoint, and then look at the Eastern viewpoint, and then give you what I think is the best possible answer. What is the real nature of God? So let me first answer the big question. Is there some kind of God or divine force or higher power? Yes. I don't know how to say it more clearly than that. Is there some kind of God or higher power or divine? Yes. All caps, scream it from the rooftops. Why do I believe that? Well, people will say, hey Brent, do you believe in God? First I'll ask, please define God, right? After they've defined God, I'll give my answer. I would say this about this. When people ask me, hey Brent, why do you believe there's some higher power, some divine force, some kind of God? Simple. I work with and use God every day. I believe in God for the same reason I believe in my car. Why do I believe in my car? Well, when I need to drive somewhere, it takes me there. Is it perfect? No. That's why it's such a great analogy. Sometimes your car doesn't work. Maybe your garage door won't lift. Maybe you have a flat tire. Maybe you're out of gas. Maybe your battery's dead. So it's not perfect. But more often than not, when you know how to drive your car, it takes you to where you want to go. And that's been my experience with God and the divine. I show up at work every day. If God doesn't show up to support me, I fail. And I've been doing this every day, full time for 20 years now. So I believe in God because I use God. However, that's my experience. Please don't believe that just because I said it. You need to have your experience. So let's talk about the different viewpoints. First, we're going to dive into the Western perspective on God. And quite simply, most of us that grew up in a Western religious culture, which is primarily Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And of course, within them, you have all these different branches and sects and groups and organizations. And so these are often called the Abrahamic religions because all of them, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all trace their lineage back to the sons of Abraham. The Christians and the Jews through Isaac, the Muslims through Ishmael. So it's really kind of the same God. And I want to look at this. So what is the Western idea of God? Now, of course, Judaism, Christianity, Islam are slightly different. But big picture, they're more alike than they're different. That God is something outside of us. That God lives in heaven, which is not on earth. Usually we think of it as up in the sky, maybe in outer space. And that God is a superior being, is better than us in every way. And that we humans are just this dirty filth that happened to crawl out of the ocean. And we're just the luckiest dirty fish in the world that we happen to connect with this incredible divine being that will protect us and guide us and love us and also kick us in the butt and send us plagues when we're bad. So that's kind of the Western view. And if we look back at history, it's interesting to see that the God of the Bible, as we may call it, the God of the Western ideas, is some kind of separate being that punishes and judges us. And if you think about it, that kind of sounds like your father when you're a child, doesn't it? Right. Why? What other archetypes did ancient people have? The most advanced, most conscious, most aware thing they could find is another human. So it's natural that we would push our ideas of the attributes of our parents onto God, because that's all we know. But many of us find that this idea doesn't really work. We're going to get more into this later in the series when we talk about heaven and hell more directly. Is there such a place? Is it real? What happens after you die? That's coming. But for right now, I want to focus on this concept of God. So basically in the West, we have this idea that God is better than us, separate from us, is a being like a person, just a higher form of being that lives in heaven and judges us and punishes us and also sends us boons and blessings, all depending on whether or not we're doing things that God likes. So that's sort of the Western idea of God. Now, there's some obvious problems with this. The first is, of course, that if God is a being, then there are many other things that are also beings that are equivalent to God, but God is supposed to be greater than them. So that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Let me put it more clearly. If we say that God looks like an old white man with a beard sitting on a cloud, then that's kind of telling us implicitly that God does not look like a young black woman sitting at a bus stop or at a coffee store. That God does not look like a whale or a cat or a dolphin. That's the problem we run into. And of course, for a lot of us, it doesn't make sense. You go, that doesn't make sense. Why is it that the people made God depicted that way? Well, simple, that's what they look like. It's fascinating if you look at cultures around the world. If you look at their local artwork, they all depict Jesus as looking like them. So if you go to a predominantly white area like Northern Europe, they depict Jesus as being white. If you go to, say, Mexico, he will appear to be Hispanic, have olive skin. There are places in Africa that depict Jesus as black. So just notice, that old idea of God is simply based on we don't know what he looks like, so we're going to assume he looks like the most powerful thing we're familiar with, which is namely mature man of our culture. So I would say on the whole, if you're watching this video, you probably know that the whole God of the Bible thing is bunk, right? But I want to be clear, it's not that there isn't such a thing. There is. The Bible really talks about Yahweh as a tribal God of the Jewish people. And Genesis is very interesting because it's confusing. Some of Genesis will give you the idea that God is the all that is. I'm the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. Right, that's talking about the real God, the true creator. But then it talks about God sending plagues and yelling at people if they eat fish on the wrong day. So it's like, no, I don't think so. Here's the key I want you guys to look for. If you look at the Old Testament and read the Ten Commandments, here's what it says. The commandment says, you shall not have other gods before me. The commandment does not say there are no other gods. That's really important. It would have been very easy for God to tell Moses, there are no other gods, I'm the only one. That's not it. What it says is, you shall not have other gods before me. So that's telling us implicitly there are other gods, right? Otherwise you wouldn't say that. So the Bible tells us there are other gods. Yahweh is simply one among them, but demands the loyalty of his people come from first. It's no different than any secular ruler, any tyrant or dictator, even a president. So what is the God of the Bible? Truly, the God of the Bible is a demigod. Is there such a thing out in the multiverse? There's something like it, yes. But that is not the all that is. It's not the everything. And again, look at the Ten Commandments. It's right there. The key is right there. You shall not have other gods before me. So that kind of closes the book on the Western idea of God. So let's move on. So what do we know about God from the Eastern perspective? Well, first of all, there's a lot of different Eastern perspectives. Just like the West, I'm treating them all as kind of one big monolithic chunk. It's not. Obviously, there's Buddhism and Hinduism and Shintoism and Taoism and lots of different philosophies. And even within them, there's all sorts of different organizations and sects and groups. It's crazy, just like in the West. But I'm going to talk big picture. So big picture, if we look at Buddhist philosophy, we'll see that the idea of God isn't a being as much as it is a state to be attained. So in the original, more pure Buddhism, it was simply a philosophy for living a spiritual life to lower our suffering, to live more in divine connection, to be in the flow, to be present. And I think that's a great thing. The trouble with Buddhism, like every human religion, is that over time it got corrupted. Most of you watching this probably learned in school about the whole Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther, and then the 30 Years' War and all the stuff that went on in Europe. That all happened because the church got so powerful and so rich they got corrupted. They were selling religious favors for money. That kind of is what drove it. And it's interesting, the exact same thing happened within Buddhism. Over the centuries, they became wealthy, they became powerful, the priests and religious officials got corrupted, and they started selling religious favors for money. So it's interesting that it's not about the belief system, it's about people. You give the religion to people, they always kind of do the same thing with it. They kind of screw it up and corrupt it. And of course, it's not just Buddhism. If we look in the Vedic philosophies, I think you'll find, again, very close to the truth. And my opinion, one man's experience, I think the Eastern teachings are closer, but you can absolutely find God through the Western teachings too. I think it's just harder, at least harder for me. That's all. So absolutely, you can find enlightenment as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew. Of course you can. Everyone can. Doesn't matter what path you walk, they all take you to the same mountaintop, right? So within the Eastern philosophies, they don't see God as a separate being as much as a force or a state to be attained. And I think that's closer to the truth. Now, I do want to call out the Indian traditions, the Vedic philosophies, Hinduism. I'm not a world's expert on it. I did not grow up in a Hindu home. It's something I've learned in my lifetime. But one of the really interesting things is, if you talk to the people that are serious on their path, we're not talking day-to-day people that just go, oh yeah, I'm Hindu because my parents were Hindu and I go to the temple once a year and make an offering. No, we're talking about people that really devote their lives to it like I have. So when you talk to people that have devoted their lives to spiritual study, this is what you'll find. Within Hinduism, you have the idea of Brahman. That's kind of the ultimate creator god, the oneness from which everything comes. Then we have the demigods, which is the whole colorful cast of characters that we associate with Hinduism. And many of the regular people day to day just have their local tribal demigod or deity. They give offerings and such. But those that go deep go, yeah, the demigods, they exist in their own way, but they're not the all it is. And so I think we find something much closer to the truth within this philosophy. The quote, real God is this Brahman, this idea of the one creator from which everything comes. That's going to lead us to the right direction. And so I'd say on the whole, the East points us in the right direction, but I'm not sure it completely answers the question. Or again, you have all this human and secular stuff that's corrupted the messaging over the years. So can you find it that way? Yeah, I think it's a little easier. But I don't think it's directly on point. Obviously, another big difference between the West and the East is the idea of lives. In the West, the idea is you have one life, and then God judges you pass-fail. You pass, you go to heaven, eternity of bliss. You fail, you go to hell, eternity of punishment. In the East, the idea is you're a reincarnating spirit. And karma shows up through when you're good in your life, you get a promotion in the next one. When you're bad in your current life, you get a demotion. Pretty simple. So let's pull this all together and let's talk about what is the closest thing that we can get our human brain around in regards to God. So I would say, first of all, I'm not sure the full truth of God fits inside a human brain. I think that would be a little presumptuous to assume. That, to me, trying to get the full truth of reality into a human brain is like trying to take an aircraft carrier and park it in your garage. You may have a great garage. It may be big as far as garages go, but there's no garage in the world I'm aware of that you can park an aircraft carrier inside of. So why? It's just too big. Same thing. I'm not sure the full truth fits in our head, but I want to try to get as close as we can. So we're going to lay it out for you in the next few minutes. What is the closest thing we can get to our modern concept of the real God, the Creator? Before we do that, though, I have to call you out and say if you're enjoying this, if you want to see more videos like this, spirituality, energy healing, ascension of consciousness, life's biggest questions, make sure you click like and subscribe, people. That's the only way YouTube knows that you're enjoying the video and that you should get more like this. So please take a moment, click like, click subscribe. If you're interested in working with me, learning more, you might want to click on the link in the description for my Healathon. It's a live webinar I do several times a year. You can come and actually experience the modality for yourself. I'll bring you into the quantum field. I'll show you how to check for blocks. I'll do a clearing on you, do healings. I'll show you all that. So check it out. And if you have any questions or comments, please discuss. I try to personally answer every single comment on the channel. And I think this topic about God, we could have some awesome, juicy discussions. So don't be afraid. Let me know what you're thinking. All right, awesome. So let's get back to it. What is the closest we can get to the truth about God? All right, so first thing I want to introduce you to is the concept of non-duality. And if you've been on your spiritual path, you've almost certainly heard this word before. You may have studied non-duality. In the East, they call it Advaita Vedanta. In the West, sometimes it's called awakening, different words for it. And what it comes down to is that the essence of the divine, of God, is at its most fundamental, non-dual. Okay, what does that mean, Brent, right? So duality is aromopolarity of opposites, of hot and cold, of up and down, of left and right. So as an example, we can move in 3 dimensions in our human reality. I can go forward and backward, right? I can go left and right. I can also go up and down. Why is that? Well, we have a polarity, a duality of dimensions. So I can go left and I can go right. I can go up and I can go down. You can be healthy, you can be sick. And so anything that is within polarity, that has opposites, cannot be the non-dual. Because the non-dual has no opposite. It cannot be created or destroyed or changed in any way. That is the divine. And so the things we're familiar with, our bodies, our computers, our cars, our sofas, our homes, those are all within polarity, within duality. A human is entirely within duality. Why? Your body and your mind didn't exist before you were born. Certainly not before you were conceived. And at some point we all die and our bodies disintegrate. I heard that for every person that lived on the earth over 2,000 years ago, there's an over 99% chance that you have some atom from their body in your body. Pretty amazing, huh? So it is almost 100% that you have some little bit of Jesus Christ, of Mohammed, of whoever your religious leader is, of Moses, you name it, Buddha, anyone that lived over 2,000 years ago, some atom that was in their body is now in yours. Pretty neat, huh? All that's within polarity. That's all duality. If you were to join a monastery or a convent in many parts of the world, one of the first lessons they teach you is to distinguish between that which is real and that which is not. And they would say that which is real is eternal, unchangeable, cannot be created or destroyed. That which is not real can be created, destroyed, changed. So they would look at a dinner plate and see that its ultimate destiny would be to be dropped on the floor and get broken and be thrown in a landfill. Therefore, the dinner plate is not real. The only thing that is real in this sense, the only non-dual, is the act of awarenessing. And this is a key. God is not a being. If that's what you're looking for, you will find at best a demigod. The true creator God is not a being, does not have a body, does not have a location. It's everywhere. It's every when. Cannot be created or destroyed. And this one takes time to understand. So if you don't totally get this, good, you're on the right track. It's sort of like, can you stop every creature in the world from running? No. You could stop me from running, right? You could trip me, right? You could hit me in the head. You could tackle me. You could bribe me and say, Brent, sit down, stop running, right? Of course. So you can stop one person from running, but you can't stop running. How do you do that? Can't. That's more along the lines of God. So now you've heard me say a bunch of times, God is not a being. And you're like, okay, Brent, I hear you. God is not a being. But if not that, what else could it possibly be? And it's kind of funny. I'm going to give you the answer. And it comes out of the world of science, ironically. Science gives us the best answer to what is God. Kind of crazy. Because you would think, well, if you want to know about the nature of God, religion is kind of the obvious place to look. But you won't find the answer there, or at least it's much harder. And it's this. The best model we can have in our little human brains for the divine is a field effect like gravity. So we all know about gravity. We experience it every moment of our lives. And notice how gravity has some of those aspects of the non-dual, doesn't it? Yeah. That as long as there's matter and space, there is gravity. You can't have one without the others. They come together. And gravity can't really be created or destroyed, can it? No. You can put mass together that creates a big gravitational effect, but you're not actually increasing or decreasing gravity. You're just increasing or decreasing the mass that is connected to the gravity. So it does obey the principles of the non-dual. And if we think about it, God as a field makes a lot of sense. Earlier I said that I believe in God for the same reason I believe in my car. Because most of the time it takes me to where I want to go. And that's great. That's exactly what energy healing is, what consciousness is, the law of attraction, intuition, enlightenment, ascension. That's why I got into this stuff, because I wanted to really figure it out. I wanted to go really deep down the rabbit hole with a pick and a shovel and make the hole deeper and find what's at the bottom. And this is what's there. And just like gravity, we can learn how the divine works and apply it to suit our purposes. With gravity, Isaac Newton figured out a lot of it with his laws of motion. It was a huge gift to humanity. Oh my gosh, one of the greatest things we humans have ever done is Principia. A couple hundred years later, Albert Einstein gave it an upgrade with relativity. So we now have near perfect math and physics for gravity. And therefore, we can use gravity and create cool effects. By understanding gravity, we can build airplanes and rockets and spaceships and all these things. Why? We learn how it works and we go with it. And that's exactly what I do. I learn from my teachers how God works. And I bring it into our play every day to achieve real goals. So whether your goal is to make more money, or to find love, or heal your body, or improve your intuition, or find your purpose, or even to achieve enlightenment and ascension, that's why I created Awakening Dynamics. You're in the right place. If you're interested in working with me, learning a little more, come to one of my live Healathon webinars. Would love to blow you away with some interactive processes and exercises so you can experience this for yourself. But for now, that's about all I have to say about God. The closest we can get is to see it as a non-duality, a field effect akin to gravity. That, I think, is as good as we're going to do. Pretty cool, huh? Let this sink in. Over time, it will absolutely change everything about your life. I am Brent Michael Phillips. I'll be signing off for now and looking forward to seeing you for video 3 in our series, where we're going to answer the question, what really happens after you die? Pretty cool stuff, huh? Until then, please take care and namaste.